What is up, my friend? Welcome to episode 7 of Inside the 20 by Basement Brewed Fantasy Football, where we have over 300 members that are outsmarting their friends and dominating their leagues using our elite analysis, our tools, and our amazing online community. I'm your host. I am Mikey, and I am absurdly excited about today's episode. Maybe it's because I switched to caffeinated coffee for once. Maybe it's because I was blasting my hype music playlist of Megan Thee Stallion, Lil Dicky, Connor Price. Yeah, that's my hype music, okay? And I'm not apologizing for it because they're awesome. And you can debate me all you want. You'll be wrong. You can debate me all you want. And that's why my fantasy football analysis, by the way, that's rooted in data and facts and stats, because you can't argue that stuff. Today, let's dive in. If you haven't noticed, NFL free agency has gone wild. Absolutely insane, especially for fantasy football purposes. So today, we're going to dive into free agency frenzy. We're going to talk about Derrick Henry joining the Baltimore Ravens. We're going to talk about Saquon Barkley staying in the NFC East and going to the division rival Philadelphia Eagles. And we're going to talk about Josh Jacobs joining my beloved Green Bay Packers. Coming up on BBFF, there's still a lot to discuss. We got to talk about Tony Pollard and Joe Mixon and Austin Eckler and DeAndre Swift, Kirk Cousins, Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, Deontay Johnson, Mike Gesicki. There's a lot to discuss, and there's still a lot of dominoes yet to drop, right? We still don't know what's going to happen with Justin Fields. We don't know what's going to happen with Marquise Brown. All of this is a good reason for you to really quickly press pause and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a dang thing moving forward. All right, it is officially official. King Henry will be spending his age 30 season in Baltimore as the newest member of the Baltimore Ravens. And my friend, this is perfect. This is a match made in heaven. It's an exciting signing for the Ravens and their fans. Their fans are going to love this. It's an exciting signing for Derrick Henry himself in his skill set. It's a perfect match. And of course, this is a really exciting landing spot for Derrick Henry in fantasy football. We're talking drool emojis all across the board. He is going to a better team. No offense to the Tennessee Titans, no offense to their fans. I don't think there's a lot of people that would disagree that at least in 2024, Baltimore should outperform Tennessee in pretty much every offensive metric. And not just an improvement in the team, but going to the offense that he's going into, the elite Baltimore Ravens offense, who at worst should be a top 10 offense in the NFL. At best, we're talking top 5, top 1, possibly. The biggest thing here, and why that's important, is because being on an elite offense and on a terrific team that was the number 1 seed in the AFC last year, Baltimore is bound to more often than not experience positive game script or neutral game script at worst. If you're unfamiliar with the concept of game script, basically all I'm saying is the frequency in which the team will be ahead on the scoreboard, behind on the scoreboard, or very close on the scoreboard. One of the biggest, arguably the biggest bugaboo for King Henry during his time in Tennessee is that at times, Tennessee's offense wasn't very effective and their defense wasn't effective, and they would fall behind on the scoreboard and fall behind early, forcing them to abandon the run at times and put the ball in the air in an effort to try and catch up to the opponent. Derrick Henry was never a part of their plan in the passing game. So there were times during his Tennessee Titans career where he was basically left behind in the game because Tennessee was forced to throw the ball. The exact opposite is likely to happen as a member of the Baltimore Ravens. Again, elite offense, top 10, top 5. They should have no problem finding themselves ahead on the scoreboard more often than not. And at worst, we're talking close games for Baltimore. Point being, volume should not be an option. They shouldn't be pressed into a scenario where they're forced to throw the ball a lot like Tennessee had been in the past. Fair to suggest that Derrick Henry should be a lock for anywhere between 18 to 22 touches per game, with the occasional instance of him getting 25 to 30 carries as Baltimore is trying to run the clock out in the second half. Last year's Ravens, by the way, the running backs touched the football 420 times in 17 games, averaging out to 24.7 touches per game for Baltimore running backs. The only running backs that are currently under contract from last year are Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell. both of which can be safely ignored, at least in fantasy football. I mean, it's possible one of them carves out some really, really low-end PPR flex value during bye weeks, but during draft season, those two guys are pretty much safe to ignore in fantasy football. King Henry should be locked in for 19 to 23 touches per game in an effective offense. Volume, check. Not an issue at all. Because he's going to an elite offense, there should be touchdown opportunities galore. Baltimore should be one of the highest scoring teams in the NFL. They should have no trouble moving the ball. They should have no trouble getting inside the 20, getting inside the 5, getting down to the goal line. And when they get down to that goal line, guess who's going to get the football? Should be plenty of scoring opportunities for King Henry in an elite Baltimore Ravens offense. Then you have the offensive line, where he's going from a projected bottom 10 offensive line to a projected top 10 offensive line on the Baltimore Ravens. So now we're talking efficiency. Should be bigger holes to run through, bigger opportunity for long runs and big plays. So at this point, volume, check. Touchdown opportunity, check. Efficiency, check. And when you mash all three of those things together, whew, my friends, strap in, buckle up, because we are boarding a rocket ship to a potential top 5 RB season for Derrick Henry. And if you want some numbers behind this, by the way, last year's Ravens, without Derrick Henry, with a combination of Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, Keaton Mitchell, J.K. Dobbins, Melvin Gordon, last year's Ravens finished first in rushing attempts, first in rushing yards, and fourth in rushing touchdowns without Derrick Henry. Okay? By the way, for what it's worth, there have been 50 career games for Derrick Henry where he has landed in the window of 15 to 25 touches. On average, that came out to about 19 touches per game and 17.5 PPR points per game. He scored 15 or more PPR points in 58% of those games and 20 or more points in 36% of those games. And the ceiling was very well intact, hitting 30-plus points in 4 games and 40-plus points in 2 games with a high of 47.8. So again, volume, check. Touchdown opportunity, check. Efficiency, check. Buckle up. Get on that rocket ship, because we are talking top 5 running back season for Derrick Henry in fantasy football 2024. He is bound to be the ultimate high achiever. Speaking of which, if you want to be the ultimate high achiever and make the absolute most out of this one life that you're given, then you need to get in touch with Paul Conley from High Achievers. High Achievers is a mastermind group helping men grow, achieve big goals, and develop friendships that are lifelong and meaningful. Yours truly is a member of this group, and it meets every single week on Thursdays, helping each other professionally and personally, and helping each one of us become better fathers, better husbands, better professionals, better entrepreneurs, better men, and quite frankly, better humans. Get in touch with Paul Conley from the High Achievers using the notes that are left for you in the show notes. All right, 27-year-old Saquon Barkley is staying in the NFC East after signing a 3-year, $37.8 million, 26 of which are guaranteed, contract with the division rival Philadelphia Eagles. And I want you to take a really quick second to buckle up, because I am about to take you on one wild ride, one heck of a roller coaster here. So Saquon is joining an Eagles offense, a Nick Sirianni offense, that has finished 10th or higher in rushing attempts in each of the last 5 seasons, even dating back to his days as the offensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts. So 10th or higher in rushing attempts. That includes 6th or higher in rushing attempts in 4 of the last 5 seasons, including all 3 as the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. Those offenses have been 11th or better in rushing yards in each of the last 5 seasons, going back to his time with the Colts. They've been 8th or better in all 3 seasons he's been with the Eagles. And his offenses have been 10th or better in rushing touchdowns in each of the last 5 seasons, including 6th or better in rushing touchdowns in each of the last 4. And in 2021 and 2022, Nick Sirianni's offenses finished first in the NFL in rushing touchdowns. That all sounds great for Saquon Barkley, doesn't it? However, over the last 3 seasons, quarterback Jalen Hurts has vultured 38 rushing touchdowns for the Eagles. And for comparison's sake, by the way, if you combine all of the Eagles running backs over the last 3 years, you get 40 rushing touchdowns. So all Eagles running backs combined just barely outscored Jalen Hurts 40-38. In fact, if you want to zoom in and look at the last 2 years, Jalen Hurts is the one that's in the lead. Over the last 2 years, Jalen Hurts has 28 rushing touchdowns compared to 25 for all Eagles running backs combined over the last 2 seasons. Now, unless this play is banned in the NFL, Philadelphia has zero reason to abandon the brotherly shove. This is a play that they were converting upwards of 90% of the time. It was automatic that if they needed a yard, they would get a yard. And they have zero reason to abandon that. We already know if the Philadelphia Eagles get down to the 1 yard line, we know who's getting that football. The defense knows who's getting that football, and there's nothing they can do about it. And there's no reason for Philadelphia to abandon that. The only 2 reasons I could possibly think of, and these are long shots, are number 1, maybe the Eagles are uncomfortable shoving their franchise quarterback into a dog pile. But 90% conversion rate, why in the world would they stop now? Number 2, Jason Kelce retired. The guy who snaps the ball and initiates the play, that could impact and bring down their level of success from last year. But until we see it, there's no reason to believe Philadelphia will abandon the brotherly shove. So I'm not saying Saquon Barkley's not going to score touchdowns. Of course he's going to score touchdowns. He's one of the most electric players on the football field. But when the Philadelphia Eagles get down to the goal line, which is where most teams hand the ball to their running back, those opportunities are likely to be limited for Saquon Barkley, and that's a big deal. There's 2 main ways that running backs unlock their ceiling, unlock their upside. And if you want evidence of that, go back and look at Christian McCaffrey, LaDainian Tomlinson, Adrian Peterson, Todd Gurley. Look back at some of the big seasons that running backs have had, and you'll find there's 2 ways running backs unlock their upside. Touchdown chances and being used as a receiver in the passing game. We've already discussed touchdown chances might be limited when they get inside the 5 yard line or get down to the 1 yard line. But what about in the passing game? Well, Kenneth Gainwell has been the best receiving running back for the Eagles in the last 3 years under Nick Sirianni, and he averaged just 3.13 targets per game in 2021. Miles Sanders averaged just 1.5 targets in 22, and then DeAndre Swift, who is a very, very capable pass catcher, by the way, averaged just 3.1 targets per game last year. And DeAndre Swift is no slouch in the passing game. That's one of his best traits. That's one of his best qualities as a running back and as a fantasy football asset, and he got just 3.1 targets per game. Okay, now, there's no denying Saquon Barkley is better than all those guys. And there's no denying that Saquon Barkley has long had a skill set that resembles that of Christian McCaffrey. So the hope is that the Eagles coaching staff recognizes that and utilizes him that way. But when you look at the stats, the facts, the data, there's no history to suggest that's what's coming for Saquon Barkley, at least during Nick Sirianni's time in Philadelphia. However, there's room for optimism when you look at Nick Sirianni's resume and the work that he did when he was the offensive coordinator of the Indianapolis Colts between the years of 2018 and 2020. In 2018, Marlon Mack was the RB14, averaging 14.8 PPR points per game, which, by the way, is a much, much higher average than we've seen from any of the Eagles running backs in any of the last 3 years. Nyheim Hines was also the RB27 that year, most notably averaging 5 targets per game. Okay, so Sirianni is willing to throw the ball to his running back if he's a capable pass catcher. Granted, in those years, Sirianni was dealing with Andrew Luck during his last season, Jacoby Brissett, Phillip Rivers. Nobody that's like Jalen Hurts capable of just taking off and running with it at any time, needing to throw to a running back. 2019, Marlon Mack was the RB22 at 13 points per game. And then you get to 2020, where Nyheim Hines had a terrific season, finishing as RB15 on 4.7 targets per game. And then you got Jonathan Taylor in his rookie season, who finished as RB6 at 16.9 PPR points per game. And there's no real debating that Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley are closest. Jonathan Taylor is the closest caliber of running back to Saquon Barkley that Nick Sirianni will have had the pleasure of working with. So there's room for optimism that he gets maximum efficiency, maximum usage, and is able to extract the most out of Saquon Barkley the way that he worked really well with Jonathan Taylor during his rookie season. It's worth noting, by the way, that the Eagles are bringing in a brand new offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore, who's widely considered one of the sharpest play callers, one of the sharpest offensive coordinators, one of the sharpest young minds in the NFL, even despite the atrocity that was the 2023 LA Chargers. Kellen Moore spent 4 years with the division rival Dallas Cowboys between 2019 and 2022, and he spent last year with the LA Chargers. Now, in 5 years as an offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore's offenses have finished 15th or higher in rushing attempts in 4 of those 5 seasons. They've been 9th or better in rushing yards in 3 of those 5 seasons, and he's got some really, really, really strong individual seasons out of the running backs that he's worked with. Ezekiel Elliott in 2019 was the RB3, averaging 22.2 touches per game, which included 4.4 targets per game. He scored 14 touchdowns, 12 of which were rushing, and he averaged 19.5 PPR points per game. Terrific season. 2020, Ezekiel Elliott took a little bit of a step back, but still finished as fantasy's RB9. He was getting plenty of work, averaging 19.7 touches per game, including 4.7 targets per game. He only scored 8 touchdowns, 6 of which were rushing, but he still averaged 14.9 PPR points per game. And then in 2021, Zeke was fantasy's RB7, still averaging 16.7 touches per game, including 3.8 targets per game. He scored 12 touchdowns, 10 of which were rushing, averaging 14.8 PPR points per game. And this is the season where Tony Pollard started to eat into Ezekiel Elliott's workload as Zeke started to wear down as a many-year workhorse. Tony Pollard landed as fantasy's RB28 that year, and then we saw a complete changing of the guard in 2022, where Tony Pollard was the guy who finished as fantasy's RB8, averaging 14.5 touches per game, over 3 targets, and scoring 12 touchdowns, 9 of which were rushing. And by the way, that season, Zeke himself finished as RB22 because he had 12 touchdowns. Now, 2023, that was a nightmare. Austin Eckler missed the majority of that time. Kellen Moore was spent a lot of the season working with some sort of committee between Joshua Kelly and Isaiah Spiller and an injured Austin Eckler. It was a bit of a nightmare. But what does all of this mean for Saquon Barkley in 2024? What does Nick Sirianni's work with Eagles running backs, with Colts running backs? What does Kellen Moore's work with Dallas Cowboys running backs? What does this all mean? What does it all boil down to for Saquon Barkley in 2024 fantasy football? Explosive games are certain. When you take an electric talent like Saquon Barkley and you insert him into an elite offense like the Philadelphia Eagles, there are bound to be gigantic weeks where Saquon Barkley single-handedly wins you fantasy football games in 2024. The problem, and where things get a little bit sticky, is that the week-to-week consistency might prove to be extremely frustrating for fantasy football managers who draft Saquon Barkley in 2024 for reasons discussed earlier about the possibility of Saquon suffering a loss of goal line opportunities and or suffering a loss of target potential. Because there will be weeks where if he's not getting the targets and he's not getting goal line opportunities, there will be weeks where Saquon is essentially forced to score fantasy football points via rushing yards and rushing yards only, meaning he'll need to get you 100 plus, 150 plus to pay off if he's not going to get the targets and he's not going to get the scoring chances. Ultimately, there's going to be plenty of volume and plenty of just raw talent for Saquon Barkley to pay off as a top 10 running back in 2024 fantasy football. But if you're going to draft Saquon Barkley, you need to first make sure that you're comfortable and you're capable of handling the weight of that boom or bust lifestyle. Speaking of weight and speaking of lifestyle, Sustain Health and Performance and their owner, Jordan Poggle, are the go-to resource for Basement Brewed Fantasy Football subscribers that are looking to lose weight and keep it off for good. In fact, one BBFF subscriber lost over 30 pounds in their first 4 months working with Jordan, and I myself worked with Jordan when I needed to lower my cholesterol and lower my blood pressure. And by the way, I also accidentally lost 11 pounds, which was never the focus, but my wife isn't complaining at all. So if you're looking for a simple and a sustainable and an effective way where you can lose weight and, more importantly, keep it off for good, all while performing your best every single day, then you need to contact Jordan. Get in touch with him on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or just follow the link that we left for you in the show notes to learn more about how he can work with you too. And when you do connect with him, let him know that Mikey sent you, because BBFF subscribers get 10% off their first 4 months of working with Jordan. And this week only, Jordan is running a March Madness giveaway where you can win a free, like you don't pay, free. You can win a free 4-month membership to work one-on-one with Jordan on your health and fitness goals. That giveaway ends on March 19th, so if you want to get into it, pause this episode and use the link that we left for you in the show notes. All right, let's talk about the Cheeseheads real quick. Go Pack Go! We got Josh Jacobs, who's going to be spending his age 26 season in Green Bay, Wisconsin, as the newest member of the Packers after signing a 4-year, $48 million contract, which includes $12.5 million guaranteed. Now, I don't think there's many people in the world that would argue that Josh Jacobs is going to a better offense than where he was, going from the Las Vegas Raiders to the Green Bay Packers. And heck, even if you did want to argue, the data, the stats, the facts imply and suggest that Green Bay is a significantly better environment for a running back like Josh Jacobs than the Las Vegas Raiders. Last year's Raiders finished 23rd in scoring, 27th in offensive yards, and 27th in rushing attempts, whereas last year's Green Bay Packers, under their first year with Jordan Love as the youngest team in the NFL, finished 12th in scoring and 11th in offensive yards, not to mention finishing 9th in the NFL in percentage of drives that resulted in points. All of that, despite being the youngest team in the NFL. There's other upgrades all across the board, by the way. The Packers have a better offensive line. They run more plays than the Raiders. There's more rushing attempts than the Raiders. All of these things, all of these are up-pointing arrows, all of which should improve Josh Jacobs' efficiency as a runner, something he struggled with last year and in previous years with the Raiders. So, efficiency? Check. Let's talk a little bit about volume. The Green Bay Packers are vacating 436 touches from their backfield. That's 25.65 touches per game that are left unaccounted for in the Green Bay Packers backfield. There's not a single running back from 2023 that touched the football that is still currently under contract with the Green Bay Packers. They're all gone, every single one. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon are obviously the two biggest names out of that bunch. They're gone. Aaron Jones is with the Minnesota Vikings. Whew, man, that hurts the heart when I say that out loud. A.J. Dillon is as good as gone. Those two guys combined for about 21.88 touches per game last season. And again, neither one will be back. And there's nobody else that's under contract from last year. So, volume is not likely to be an issue for Josh Jacobs. There should be plenty of volume, plenty of opportunities for Josh Jacobs in 2024. Now, that said, traditionally under Matt LaFleur, the Green Bay Packers have been a 2 running back system, and they currently have no depth. What they do have is 11 draft picks to spend in next month's draft. They have pick 25, 41, 58, 88, 91. They have a 4th-round pick, a 5th-round pick. They have 2 6s and 2 7s. So it's not a matter of if the Packers draft a running back or 2 running backs. It's a matter of when the Packers draft a running back or two running backs. It's a matter of what pick they spend. It's a matter of what round they draft that number 2 RB that ultimately is going to help us determine how valuable and how much of a workhorse Josh Jacobs is going to be in 2024. In all likelihood, the Packers want to get a running back with some pass-catching chops, somebody that's capable of coming in and being a pass-catching option out of the backfield on third downs and in passing situations. By the way, I think this is a sneaky bet for second-year receiver Jaden Reed, who flashed very well as a Deebo Samuel light last year, very well as a ball carrier. I think this is a sneaky opportunity for him to sneak a couple additional carries onto his plate, further building his floor, further building his ceiling going into year 2. But we're not talking Jaden Reed, we're talking Josh Jacobs. And the question here that will ultimately determine Josh Jacobs' 2024 draft value in fantasy football drafts is how early of a draft pick the Green Bay Packers use on that RB2. But as it stands right now, as of this recording, Josh Jacobs looks like a really, really strong bet, a lock, if you will, for a minimum of 15 touches per game in that Green Bay Packers offense, a number that could get up past, somewhere around 20 touches per game if they don't invest high-end draft capital in a running back. So we're talking about plenty of volume and moving to a efficient offense that's plenty capable of putting points on the board. So this sounds a lot like a poor man's version of Derrick Henry. We're talking volume plus efficiency plus scoring chances. Packers were above average in scoring last year. It's another potential rocket ship opportunity for Josh Jacobs to pay dividends in 2024 fantasy football. If we're projecting him to land anywhere between 15 and 25 games, he's done that, or 15 and 25 touches, he's done that 38 times in his career. There have been 38 career games for Josh Jacobs where he landed somewhere between 15 and 25 touches. During that time, he's averaged 15.6 PPR points per game, and he has scored upwards of 15 PPR points in 44.7% of those games. And keep in mind, he did that on bad Raiders offenses, ones that finished 18th or worse in scoring in 3 of the 5 seasons that he's been with the Las Vegas Raiders coming into this year. So again, better offense, better scoring chances, better efficiency, and high-end volume. I think it's entirely, again, it's going to depend on what the Green Bay Packers do in the draft. But as it stands right now, Josh Jacobs should be a top 10 running back in 2024 fantasy football. And that, by the way, is why it's imperative that you press pause, click subscribe, and sign up on basementbrewedff.com, because these things are going to change over the next several months, and I will be continuously updating my draft rankings, updating my draft guide. You're always going to be in the know when a player's value shifts, so that you're constantly getting and staying ahead of your friends before that first football is even kicked come September. All right, this drive is over, and I think we punched it in the end zone. I think this one was a touchdown. If you liked this episode, then go back. You got to go back and check out episode 6 if you haven't yet. It was a terrific conversation on Russell Wilson joining the Steelers, Jerry Jeudy joining the Browns, negative regression coming for Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers offense. And be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can come back on Tuesday morning for episode 8, where we're going to continue this discussion on free agency frenzy. We're going to talk Tony Pollard joining the Titans. We're going to talk Joe Mixon going to the Texans. And we're going to talk about a heck of a lot more on Tuesday morning, episode 8. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Between now and then, I am going to be updating the 2024 Fantasy Football Draft Guide. I'm going to be updating the 2024 Best Ball Rankings. These are resources that my members on basementbrewedff.com are using to dominate year in, year out. When you're ready to join us, when you're ready to join 300 plus other fantasy football players in our community that are outsmarting their friends and dominating their leagues and winning DFS contests and NFL bets, then you got to get over and join us at basementbrewedff.com. We have early bird pricing baked into every single month depending on when new members sign up. So if you sign up in March, you're going to be paying less than somebody who signs up in April, who will be paying less than somebody who signs up in May, June, July, and August. And the first person that sees this or hears this and uses promo code inside the 20 all caps, all one word, use the number 20, inside the 20. The first person that enters that is going to get 20% off their first year annual subscription to basementbrewedff.com. I'll see you on the fantasy football field on Tuesday. Cheers. This brew's for you.